Excellent. All right. Thank you all so much for writing in the chat box that information. It really does help us put some context to the conversation that we're bringing to you today, and certainly to the answers that you bring to all of us. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to one of my co-hosts to talk a little bit about IPPS and the mission, the purpose, and the recent work.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to have you all here with us. And so about IPPS, stands for Innovation Pathways to Public Service. What is our mission, our purpose, and our recent work? Well, we'll share a little bit about where we started and where we'd like to go. Next slide, please. So our mission basically is to develop effective pathways into public service. We realize that there's so many talent out there that is not aware of what the public sector really is. Many of our young people think it means being a police officer or a fireman, and we know that it's much more than that. So our vision is to build bridges between public sector professionals, educators, community members, to ensure that there is a robust talent pipeline for the careers in public sector through effective data-driven strategies that we can attract, develop, and retain talent for all of our organizations. Why IPPS? We want to ensure that the Sacramento region develops new and existing talent to address the changing nature of the public sector. I'm sure many of us can relate to that. We want to raise awareness, as I was mentioning, especially to our young talent pool, that what public sector careers are and what they really can offer and be beneficial to both you as a personal career and actually as a rewarding career. And we want to address inequities in the workforce, specifically looking at making sure that the workforce reflects the people we serve in our communities. Next slide, please. And now,
well, this is where
yes, I'm going to turn that over to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, and I want to appreciate you for the many years that you've contributed to Innovative Paths of Public Service. I remember traveling with you and doing a lot of workforce presentations up and down the state, and so just thank you for your commitment and also for just the reinvigoration of the work that we're doing together. IPPS is a collaboration model. It's fundamentally built on a collective impact model. And what we try to do is bring together a network, or rather an ecosystem, of public sector workforce experts to really come together under IPPS as the convener and facilitator, and really build the partnerships between government agencies who really are demanding skilled labor. They have workforce changes and adaptations that they're looking for. And we want to bring our education and workforce partners directly to them on this public-private partnership and be able to say, hey, how do we best meet your critical needs? How do we bring your long-term goals? And how do we fill some of those hard-to-fill positions that you have out there and really get to operational excellence for all of the organizations involved, and fundamentally through these partnerships build a stronger public sector workforce, which really makes a great investment into our public good, which our public service is a great investment that we make in our civic experience. So some of the things that we focus on: best practices, sharing what's going on out there. Is it replicable? Is it scalable? Is it something that would really benefit other organizations by sharing those best practices? Civic engagement, really kind of bringing our communities together and really aware of the value of the investments that they're making in the public good around civil service occupations, and making sure those agencies are well staffed and have the right skills and talent to really deliver a quality and innovative service. A lot of changes going on there. And then finally, the long-term view of things is really creating pathway development and work-based learning. So it's kind of a in-skill and up-skill conversation. How do we get, as early as our K-12 students focused and thinking about, hey, I'd like to go into these kinds of careers and have this kind of career pathway? And also, how do we take our incumbent worker and continue their growth, as well as to be able to meet the needs when different shifts occur in government agencies like automation, or maybe there's different just demands for different services. So that's a little bit about how IPPS works. Again, it's a collaboration. We just all come here and we make what I like to call stone soup. So we come and we put the stone in the middle. Everyone puts their carrots, celeries, And then we kind of warm up the soup and we pull the stone out. Next thing, there's soup for everybody. So that's kind of the model. Next slide, please. So who is IPPS? Well, it's all of you, and we thank you for joining us, and we actually would love your engagement and reinvigoration into the IPPS collective impact. It's a diverse set of agencies, but we have a shared focus. How do we get the quality talent, and how do we align the workforce from the supply and demand? So we have folks from Roseville, ILG, Rancho Cordova City, NextGov is here, City of Sacramento, SETA, CalHR. You've got the City of Elk Grove, Folsom Lake, Sacramento County. You have the SMUT, and many, many more. So we want you to just join the family and really get involved. It's a great moment for suppliers and demanders of talent to really have a conversation around what's needed. And today we want to hear from you. This isn't really a presentation webinar. We want to have a listening session, and we want to hear, okay, it's post-pandemic, we're kind of tired, what's going on out there, what are the critical needs, and how do we best serve you and get everyone back up, kind of revigorate that hope, and really get to mission in our organizations.
And actually, if I could just make one ad, because I know we've got a mixed audience today. IPPS is based in Sacramento and the kind of the 6-county region around Sacramento. But ILG, as an Institute for Local Government, is statewide, and workforce and civics education is a big part of the work that we do up and down the state. So there might be people on the line that aren't in Sacramento, and you might be thinking, how on earth do I get connected to this work? We have a lot of phenomenal partners statewide working on this, and ILG certainly has an interest in statewide efforts. And so we encourage you to not only log into the IPPS website to sign up for that, but also make sure you're connected to the ILG team, because we also have partnerships with groups like ICMA and MMANC and SC and so many others that are really, really focused on this effort, because it is going to be a huge issue statewide. So if you're not in Sacramento or in that 6-county region, don't worry, we got your back too.
Next slide.
So that's me again. IPPS accomplishments. Well, we are a collaborative effort with all of us working together and partnering together. Many of us are doing this volunteer, and we support this effort because we believe in it. But one of the things that we've heard over the years is why all of you keep coming back and you want to stay engaged with us is we get stuff done. We actually do stuff. And so we are very proud of the accomplishments we've been able to achieve over the years that IPPS has been in existence. We serve as a regional advisory body for the public service sector. We're looking, again, as you've heard me speak before, our whole focus really is to look at developing the public sector talent pipeline of diverse youth and young adults to enter into the public service field, or help retain those that we already have, which seems to be an issue we'll probably be discussing later on this afternoon. We've conducted career and public service days for youth in government, and that has been so widely successful and so well received. We have had multiple sector career awareness experiences where young people are getting hands-on exposure to public sector departments across the 6-county region. We've had over 30 government agencies connecting educators and students. More than 1,500 youth have participated in these career awareness programs. And many of you on this call today have been our partners in this effort, and we want to thank you. And we're really looking at instituting that again in the fall. We were originally doing it as the Public Sector Career in Government Month. And then of course we know that we had this thing called COVID hit, and so we had to pivot a bit, but we still were able to implement our careers in public service days virtually. And we still had some very robust programming that we were able to conduct even during the COVID period. We've completed a public sector workforce needs assessment, which pretty much gives us kind of our roadmap of what we need to do to address some of the gaps, some of the identified high demand, hard to fill jobs in careers in the public sector. What are the gaps in training and skills, the wages, demographic information, in the 6-county region. We have that assessment on our IPPS website, and you can actually download that study. It's really great information, and we are hoping to actually update that in the very near future. We also do enhanced stakeholder engagement. We build relationships, obviously virtually and hopefully in person again very soon. As I said, we're a collaborative partnership, and we are able to accomplish all the things that I just outlined through all of your support and involvement with business education and the stakeholders in our region to try to change the status quo. So we thank you for your support. Next slide, please. I would like to turn this over to my colleague Renee John with Valley Vision, and she is going to take us away to our polling and discussion session.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here today. We're so grateful for your participation, and this is a listening session. So we have some polling questions teed up, which we're going to use a tool called Mentimeter in order to receive some of the information. We won't be isolated to just communicating that way. There'll be a discussion portion of the day as well. And I did notice the question that was posed in the chat about remote work or hybrid work. I think that's an excellent question. So maybe I'll defer to Erica after we have 4 questions teed up, but if there's time, and I think there will be, I think it would be a great opportunity to have a discussion regarding remote work policies and hybrid work policies and what's going on in the different jurisdictions that are represented here. But for right now, I'm going to introduce Angelina Olwini, who is with Valley Vision and is supporting this project. And she's going to talk to us about how to use Mentimeter for the polling exercise.
Thank you, Renee. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So to participate in the Mentimeter poll, you'll scan the QR code on your right with your phone, or you go to menti.com and enter the code that's provided right there, and you'll be able to access the poll questions. And you can also click on the link that's going to be provided in the chat.
Thank you, Angelina. So you can use your phone, like Erica said earlier, or you can go to menti.com and enter in the code, and you will see the first question that we have in front of you. As people start to answer, we're going to see a bar graph appear that's going to show which of these selections are the most common problems that each of you are dealing with. So it's multiple choice. You can choose as many answers as you want. So, feel free to check however many are relevant to you. And we'll just kind of watch in live time as it populates.
And for those of you that are on the phone only, you can go to menti.com and the code is 74496571. And that's MENTI.com. And the code is 74496571.
If you're having any challenges with the tool, you can put that information in the chat or let us know. Looks like we're getting some good results coming in. First question is, which of the following are you dealing with in public sector workforce attraction and retention? We gave you several options to choose from. So far, limited hiring pool of qualified candidates is the highest ranking challenge. Looks like we have about half the participants who have been able to, you need all of the above. You're allowed to check them all if needed.
Interesting to see that intergenerational challenges is not the biggest issue anymore. I know there was a time when that was probably would have been much higher. But the numbers are shifting. We, like she said, there's still a few people getting on the system. Defining qualified. That's a great comment, Mary. For those of you on the phone, Mary with Sac State says defining qualified is a big topic as it relates to qualified candidates.
Looks like we've had about 34 folks answer. We'll just give you another minute to answer this before we go to the next question. So if you haven't had a chance.
And make sure you click submit after you click your suggestions. You might have to scroll down to click submit.
Just go over the results quickly here. Limited hiring for qualified candidates is the highest ranking, followed by, and that's at 15%, followed by resignations and turnover at 13%. Employee preferences for remote work versus in-person is the third ranking challenge at 12%. And then we have tied at 11% the need for workplace culture changes and the wave of retirements, which is interesting. Work-life balance comes in at 10%. If any of the other facilitators have any specific comments on that right now, we can go to the next question, or we can have discussion about this now. What would you prefer?
Yeah, I thought we might have a little discussion. I know that we didn't actually, this isn't an exhaustive list. There might be some things on here that are missing. Are there things that you could see that in addition to the check all that apply box, is there anything else that's an issue that you're dealing with related to attraction and retention that's not showing here? You can either unmute yourself and speak up, or you can actually drop it in the chat. Staff burnout. Mm-hmm. That's a great one. Competitive pay. Yeah, some of those are embedded in there. Like, they're certainly competition for the qualified applicants could be because of pay, but that's a great point. Burnout, competitive pay, lack of succession planning in previous years coming to a head, right? Since you've got both resignations and retirements, how do you upskill?
Private sector wages are better.
Private sector wages, yeah, better than public sector.
We hear that a lot. Stodgy
organizational cultures, yes, definitely. And that desire for that change in culture. I was surprised that the lack of diversity in workforce isn't as high, but I definitely saw the need for workforce culture changes. That's a top 3 item. Morale, perhaps due to stress, definitely. I think the work-life balance, that's a little bit of touches on that, but it's not necessarily the same thing from the city of San Clemente.
Curious if the work culture or the stodgy culture, does that relate to a lack of innovation or a lack of flexibility, or just wondering if there was any additional detail about the workplace culture challenges? And, we won't cite you or reference you. We'll try to keep this as anonymous as possible.
Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. We'll unmute you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
It is a listening session, but you can talk as well. We actually want to listen to you.
I see Colleen says there's a misconception about opportunities in public sector, misalignment of minimum qualifications to the applicant pool, and the use of AI to filter applicants, right? So they might be over filtering, or yeah, absolutely. Or inappropriately filtering out some good candidates. Lack of flexibility, autonomy, and new ways of thinking and acting, I think, is in response to Renee's question about culture. The kinds of culture changes that need, lack of flexibility being huge turnoff for new candidates. And then Brandon thinks that intergenerational challenges are still an issue because the current work culture doesn't budge to bring on the next generation. Yeah, and that that's also kind of part and parcel to the resignations, but also to the retirements, right? So there's a combination of things that might be at play.
Thank you.
These are great comments. Sochi says, as a recruiter, I can tell you the talent is out there. Hiring managers need to make an effort to relate to the younger generations and how they communicate. She's disappointed that diversity is not higher as an issue, and that's why people don't want to work in many of the departments because they see that stodgy culture. Very helpful.
Oh, key point, length of recruitment time for hiring process.
So
That's,
true.
that's one of the things that we buck up against with the private sector because they are faster than public sector.
Yeah, by the time they get to the interview process, many candidates have already accepted other jobs
Yeah.
after those long and lengthy public notice requirements. Yeah. The lack of the public sector, the ability to offer soft benefits like food, recreation, unlimited time off, etc. Yeah. And there was a question about workforce, right? And we have other questions. Certainly, we don't want to preclude all the discussion we were going to have about the other questions too. But there was a question about remote work, for example, and some of those other perks that sort of help people feel like they have more flexibility, that work-life balance flexibility.
I'm so glad to hear Brandon says they're working on revising their exam process because it was outdated and very lengthy. That's good to hear.
Really great.
Hopefully we can hear more details from you later about that, Brandon.
We would love to have you share some of what you're working on to address some of these challenges at the end of our session. All right, Renee, do you think, and co-host, do you think we can move to the next question?
I think we can. So Angelina, if you want to move us over, this is going to be an open answer question. Which positions are you having the most difficulty filling? And you can answer more than once. So you can, keep answering with whatever positions you want to highlight. And this is going to show up as a listing. Thank you.
Finance, human resources, engineering, IT showing up a couple times, accounting, auditors. Seeing IT a couple different times.
Lifeguards.
Lifeguards, wow. Yeah. It's a unique skill set, isn't it?
Couple answers in the chat. Nurses and human services, social workers, master's level. Terry, that's for your special project.
Yeah. Mental public health. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boy, it seems like they're running the whole continuum of public sector.
It's literally everything.
I mean, from lifeguards to engineering.
Sandra's surprised that police isn't on the list more.
I know.
I have heard that there is a huge challenge with hiring for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is great information. A lot of engineering.
Yeah, heard that. See, look, 1, 2, 3, right there.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've also heard that there's certificate required employment is hard as well, like ones that require testing and or updated certificates. There could be backlogs at the state that make it complicated to hire in those positions and to maintain eligibility to be considered. Yep, there's law enforcement.
Interpreters.
Permanent, intermittent, and seasonal positions, definitely. We also could see a little bit of the carryover from the last question, right? Which is the people prepared to lead. We're seeing a lot of management in here and those that have the ability to move through the ranks, mid-level managers and other managers. Though one could argue that it looks like a lot of the positions, almost every category is being represented here. When we're done with this, I'd be curious to know which positions are not hard to fill right now. Maybe that's one, because I feel like this is literally everything. Yeah. I'm curious to know what are you getting a lot of?
Yeah, good question, Erica.
certifications or international ones need to be verified, don't have as many companies open to do them. So there's a backlog. Exactly. Yeah, Brandon, I agree. I've heard the same thing. So we've got quite a lot of comments here.
Mhm.
This is really great.
I'm just really curious, Erica, your question, is there anything what positions are you having no problem filling? If someone wanted to put that in the chat, I'm just so curious.
Sochi
It's
just dropped
one
one
person.
in. Sochi just dropped one in, and she said for parks, they're getting a lot of environmental scientists. Interesting. I wonder if there is, post-COVID, an interest in being more outdoors, an interest in being more within nature. Yeah, that's a fascinating stat there. If there's any others, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Oh, Sherry's getting a lot of entry-level state roles like office assistants and office techs. That's great. No problem with full-time tax technicians, but oops, I lost. That'll work in the call center. That's great. Not
Great.
qualified. So increasing numbers, but maybe not as qualified as you might want them to be. It sounds like maybe that's what Tina might be saying. Applicant counts are up, but the quality of those applicants might not be as it might have been before. And then, yeah, CNAs can't graduate fast enough. There's just a huge, huge need there.
Even our entry-level positions are hard to fill.
Wow.
Great stuff.
It really is.
Should we go to the next question? I think we have enough information here. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Angelina, if you'll take us to the next question. We're now going to ask you how to help you solve the problem. So what education and or training programs could benefit your efforts to find qualified applicants? And this could either be for upskilling current staff that you have to be qualified for higher level positions that you have need for, or it could be for new staff coming in for positions. It could be any level of education or training that would be helpful to your efforts to find qualified candidates. All right, internships and apprenticeships.
Yay.
Yeah, there's definitely a call for a lot of apprenticeships. I think Governor Newsom put a big target out there, and there's been a lot of innovative apprenticeships. Even the prior initiatives with IPPS, we saw some really cool, even apprenticeship to accounting. You wouldn't think it, right? But there were some interesting ones, IT ones.
Yeah, not only that, there's a lot of funding coming out from different state and federal sources to develop apprenticeship programs. We're seeing much more than we ever have before. So that's nice to see some interest in that.
I'm aware that the Community College Chancellor's Office is dropping an RFA as well. So, I mean, if there's even initiatives for people to come together in partnership around apprenticeship, there's a good time to get some funding there.
Yep. This is true.
Yes, thank you for the comment on your minimum qualifications too. So thinking about that, what are your minimum requirements or minimum qualifications for the job? And that is consistently not being met. That would be helpful for us to know for this question.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Data analytics, resiliency training, technology training.
Resiliency training.
Colleen has in the chat, the California Apprenticeship Initiative has running submission dates this year, lots of opportunity to collaborate.
Resiliency training, yeah.
Yeah, really.
I'm thinking about that. What would resiliency training be? I'm thinking of Is that time management? Is that,
Being
Is that-
flexible, being able to manage multiple projects maybe, but that could be contributing to burnout. I don't know. Yeah, good question.
Maybe it is a symptom of not being able to get the qualified staff and fill the vacancies. People are needing that kind of support.
Mhm.
Technology is really challenging in the state because it's definitely a very competitive market, especially in the Bay Area, for us to try to get.
Mhm.
Yeah, data analytics is huge.
Yeah,
So on the job training internship, that really speaks to that. Contextualized learning on the job seems to be helpful.
There's a lot of modernization that's going on with IT projects around different jurisdictions and state agencies where they are using technology to improve. So that does create a lot of demand for technical skills.
Associate degrees, that those might be a minimum qualification. Curious too, if any of the departments or organizations represented here are readjusting their minimum qualifications based on the current hiring environment, or having any success at lowering them or changing them.
I know that we've done
Curious.
some of that in our organization. We looked at some of the minimum qualifications and revamped those to make it a little broader and not so specific. So we actually have done that here at SETA.
We did that at Valley Vision about 2 years ago as part of also our diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives. Really, did we need the minimum qualifications that we
Yeah.
had listed? Were they necessary?
I find it interesting that people are noting soft skills that are helpful too, like things like, coping strategies to minimize burnout and some of the other resiliency training, things like that, also helpful, especially in the public sector where it can be a little challenging. Cultural competencies. These are really great. Thank you all so much for putting this
Really
content in.
helpful.
How to fill out an application. Now that's a good one. And we've heard that so many times that sometimes just that piece can be prohibitive for people to apply. That's why we have so many of those sessions. County, local government, state, how to apply sessions.
I think we have one more question teed up for polling, then we can go to a more broad discussion. So we'll go ahead and move on to that. And the next question we have for you is, what innovative or successful strategies are you using to attract and retain staff? So we know it's a difficult hiring environment. What, if anything, is working for you right now? Even if it's only working for one position or one class of positions or something like that, or anything innovative or a different benefit package or anything that you've tried that is improving your hiring and retention efforts.
Colleen put in the chat that there needs to be a peer support group on how to apply, working through each step of the application process. And they found that it's pretty valuable to the candidates during their job search. Thanks for sharing that.
Good job, Coach.
Remote working is helpful. Switch your testing to unproctored. Okay. Is that unproctored? Is that what that is?
Yes, unproctored.
Hybrid flex work. So supervision, so maybe different supervision strategies, I'm guessing. Oh, on-demand interviews. Good for you, whoever that is.
On-demand interviews. I'd love to know more about that.
Me too.
I like the culture comment. Happy employees are one of the best advocates. I think organizations that are people-centric, they really do a good job retention.
Raising salaries.
Once people start, they usually stay, but getting them to apply is an issue. Yeah, we've heard that so much.
Well, and utilizing employees as a promoter, right? And as maybe part of your recruitment strategy in a less official capacity. Advertising benefits and employee engagement awards. So like best place to work type thing. Oh, I get it. Okay. There's a comment about the on-demand interviews. It's interesting. It's meaning that people can record their interviews anytime within a window instead of trying to make everyone interview on a set day. And then they can score the videos on their own. That's really interesting.
Wow,
That's interesting.
really cool.
So they must have a preset list of questions and then they answer them on camera.
Yeah.
Instagram
Curious
Live.
about, like,
That is-
curious about upskilling pathways. I know the way that many government agencies work, there's kind of classifications that go 1, 2, 3, and then supervisors. So are those good strategies to retain staff as they move up the ranks through their classification? It's too long, Tina says.
Interesting, the virtual career center and brick and mortar career center that at least one organization is looking at.
There is definitely a shift in what employees are looking for in terms of benefits. One person noted that the pension plan that used to be so much about the public sector is not as big of a selling point anymore. And so they have to utilize some other strategies to highlight the benefits of the workplace. Clear path for progression, talking about what the opportunities are for growth.
These adaptation and resilience are also things that are going to retain staff, because I just know so much of us had to pick up so many new digital skills in the last year, and how adaptive our staff is to those changes is really important about retention.
Yeah.
Rate of change, right? Yeah.
The other thing that I've heard is that, the public sector might need to rethink its expectations around what retention looks like. So it used to be retention was somebody stays on the job for 20 years and they retire from there. What does retention mean now in this new environment? Is it now a 5-year horizon? Is it a 3-year horizon? What's realistic for this generation? And then how do you work around that as a workplace to meet those demands and expectations?
What I'm not seeing is mentorship. Mentorship programs, formal and informal mentorships, tend to be good ways of promoting and retaining people.
I've seen the retiree health comment too. I think that definitely did change the landscape for public sector employers and continues to impact.
The new generation changed jobs a lot. Yeah, it's like 10 to 15 jobs in your career you'll have.
Yes.
That's true for leadership too. That's another challenge, right? When leadership's changing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question in the chat. Do employers fund a 401(a) plan to supplement the lower CalPERS pensions?
I don't know that.
I think there's some good questions too that you're each kind of posing to each other. So as we finish this up, maybe we'll go to an open discussion and be able to investigate some of those. Also remembering our employers allowing working remotely a couple days a week, kind of exploring that.
Authenticity, there it is. Right.
Curious too, when we go to the remote working, I don't know if 100% remote working is an option, but there's a lot of questions around like how far can people be located? What are the bounds of remote work for organizations or for companies? And if that has are there any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it has a unique conversation for the types of organizations that are here with us today, because governments have jurisdictions, right? And so, does the government work in or outside that jurisdiction? How does that work, right?
However, I've heard some companies are, well, maybe this is more in the private sector, they're allowing telework even out of state. I don't know if that's applicable to the public sector, though. I know our
Definitely puts a
organization
paradigm.
wouldn't allow that.
I like storytelling. Yeah, getting lived experiences out on Instagram.
I do too.
Ships again.
Sherry's hearing that you have to live in the state of California to work for a state of California department. And then Brandon's noting that the older generations have thought about money and benefits as what they thought was the package, right, for employment, and certainly from a benefit standpoint. And then now the newer generations willing to work multiple jobs and have that side gig, and so they're not really thinking as much about just that one job and that one focus for all their income. So it's maybe a difference of priorities, and certainly a difference of thinking.
That's interesting. Tina listed their remote work policy, 200 miles within the department. But the department heads have a 50% discretion. That's interesting.
I think if we're good with this question, Angelina, thank you so much. If you want to stop sharing, and then we can have a discussion where we're looking at each other. How does that work? And then do we want to dig more into the remote work question? Does anybody have comments that they want to share live about either what's happening with your policy or changes that you might be anticipating, or questions you want to ask your colleagues? You can just raise your hand, maybe potentially. You could unmute.
You should see a Zoom hand if you've got any questions. I know some of you put them in the chat. I can't commit that we've saw them all. So if there are questions that you had that you wanted to articulate to the full group, now's a great chance. I do see Sandra with Mammoth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra Moberly, Town of Mammoth Lakes. We would be really interested in hearing about kind of experiences across the public sector with working from home. With COVID, we had a lot of people want to work from home. We had some of that, but we've generally been in the office here since April of 2020. We didn't really work from home much, and that's I think that there's a lot of preconceived notions maybe in the public sector about if you're not here at work, you're not working. And it'd be interesting to hear how other agencies have dealt with this, and how with jobs that aren't like producing widgets, like processing certain things, how you've kept your staff accountable. And if someone put in the chat, if anyone has a good remote policy, I think we'd love to hear it. And because I think that's the future. To stay competitive in the public sector, I think we really have to have some aspect of work from home, because we're just not going to compete with private sector if we don't. So thank you.
Yeah. It is a great question. And certainly we can ask the hive mind here to see if anybody has something to share, or could share something in the link, or maybe even reference that they've got it. We are happy as IPPS to follow up with the respondents and maybe link to the policy if you have one to share with the group. Tina, I see your hand.
Yes, thanks. So kind of answering Sandra's question to an extent, and in the chat, I don't want to share a remote work policy because I don't think it's great. It's I think trying to please too many different needs in one document, and so it ended up more restrictive than many departments wanted, and then not as restrictive as some departments want. And so I think that's that. But what's interesting is my team was 100% remote from March of 2020 until August of 2021. And so that has been a huge shift, having people come back into the office. And I don't have a good answer when they say that they were doing their jobs and they were producing at higher levels and more effective working 100% remote than they are now, with their 50% in the office and 50% remote. remote. And so because the policy said so isn't a great answer for why they have to come into the office half of their week. And so I think that's a shift in mindset that needs to happen across lots of organizations, but I also appreciate that there are some jobs that they can't do. Like our front desk person can't work remote, like they have to be at the front desk when people come in. They can't, answer from Teams, right? So there are some elements of that get complicated, and then you run into concerns of, is there equity? Is it fair? Like, why is this job more appropriate and not that one? And there's probably really good answers to those questions, but like the human side of the person who's not hearing what they want to hear, like that becomes more of a challenge. So I guess I'm waiting to see how that shakes out as things continue, because I do think, especially for certain jobs, when we're competing with private sector, for jobs that exist in all industries, not that aren't government or public service specific, like we're going to lose people because there's no incentive for them to stay. And so if they can work 100% remote at some other job in the private sector and doing the similar kind of work, what's the incentive for them to stay when pensions aren't as rich as they used to be, benefits aren't as competitive, or there's not a long-term prize for sticking around.
Those are great comments. And do you mind if we ask Tina, you mentioned your department, what department is it?
I work in human resources. So I manage the recruiters, and they also do class and comp, and then our training and OD staff. And so everything that they've done is 100% online. All of our civil service testing is online, unproctored. All of our interviews are done either via Zoom or a platform where they can do the on-demand interview process where they get recorded. So there's no need for them to be in the office. All of our meetings with our stakeholders are over Teams or Zoom. So literally for the work that my team does, there's no value for them to be physically on site, except that we have a policy that says they need to be. So it becomes kind of tricky trying to balance like what our organization has said we need to have happen and like what employees want. And to be fair, like I do think there's value of having people together occasionally, but I wish that it was more like ad hoc or as business needs require, as opposed to like the structure that a bureaucracy wants to see in place in terms of how you define that. So that's kind of, I think, the push-pull.
Thanks so much for sharing, Tina.
Hi, this is Susan Wheeler. I'm driving, so can't be on a video, so apologize if I'm interrupting. But I just wanted to add from a private sector perspective, I have a number of friends who work in high tech, and they're telling me that they expect to be asked to go back. I don't know whether full time, but back to the office, which is interesting. I just wanted to share that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Susan. You're not interrupting at all. It's perfect segue. There's a lot of chatter around what's coming in the private sector, and fintech, for example, is definitely at the higher corporate levels, at the C levels, they want their teams back. IT, I've heard mixed things like what Susan just mentioned. So it's definitely I think everyone's trying to figure it out. And then there was also a note in the chat about the fact that Omicron or part 2 or C or B or D or whatever is surging in Europe, and that could change what happens next as well. So there does need to be some flexibility. I think it's evolving over the next couple of weeks and months. Any others with a remote work policy thought or comment or even example? And maybe we will ask a question, maybe just a show of hands. How many of you actually, your organizations have remote work policies? And you're not obligated to share them, but do you have a remote work policy? I'm seeing a couple. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of yeses. Yeah, a lot of people are developing them. This is a 2-part question. So go ahead and add. Thank you. Keep on with your reactions. I'm seeing, looks like quite a few. Curious to know if you like them, if you think they're working, or if there's been some fallout from them. hard to gauge now based on the reactions, but if somebody wants to unmute and talk a little bit about what that reaction has been, certainly things have changed and people's expectations are different. Anybody want to share how that policy is being received? And there's no judgment here. Certainly, we won't share the good, bad, the ugly. We won't talk about the bad. We'd just be curious to know if it's Brandon.
This is Brandon from the Franchise Tax Board. I know my connection's a little spotty, so I'll keep the video off right now because I worked in the office earlier this morning. What I've seen is a big mix, actually. So I've seen it where we had areas like budgeting in certain areas, there were more than 100%. So they just, COVID hit, they disappeared. While we, and my division, the filing division, is more entry level, getting taxes, being in the office, we have to be in the office. So like one of the other participants said, for the most part, we were in the office the whole time, and we do hiring as well. So we had to figure out, all the stuff that was coming down from HR, how to do remote interviews, how to transition to, secure things. So for the most part, we were in the office, but so for us transitioning back in is no big deal. For the people who are entry level, they've already been in the office. They were kind of just staggered or moved around. But for the people who've been out of the office, they're making a big deal about it, saying, I don't want to go back into the office, which I think is completely ridiculous. So I think I think it's hard for them to set a good telework policy because it is necessary in some areas because work will stop, and some areas can work, but how are you really gauging if this is really being productive or not? I don't think they really have a standard for that.
Standards of productivity are a challenge. And then certainly by department, and maybe you all are experiencing this too, if you're thinking about retention within departments, I wonder if there would be an outflow of those that are forced to come back that say, I'm going to go to a fully remote department. I'm going to go somewhere
Exactly.
else. Yeah.
And as a recruiter, I do see a little bit of that as well too, in that, we're getting people who are saying, well, I'm getting burnt out because people are retiring and people are leaving and people are this. And this other agency, state agency or non-state agency, has 100% telework. So I'm just going to leave. And then you leave those people, and then it causes more burnout because now we're all picking up everyone else's slack while we're trying to backfill everybody else. So that doesn't make a very good work environment for someone brand new coming in, because we're covering other people's works while we're trying to backfill, and then we're trying to train someone, who's brand new, and they're kind of feeling stressed stepping in the door. Yeah. So resiliency, yes, we definitely need that, in that you don't get to quit when it's hard. You just keep pushing through, and then you become the expert. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Mary's getting a little dizzy now, but it's true. It's very true. And then Tina noted that the cost of commuting and the time required to commute is also a big takeaway, especially right now when gas is $6 a gallon in some parts, if not maybe higher than that. So certainly I envision that it's going to get even more heated when people are going to be forced to commute again with this cost. So the recalling to the office, I think, is just the next wave about to hit. Laura, I see your hand. And certainly feel free to jump in.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that I think that the remote policy has been excellent for our organization. We're a small division, apprenticeship and workforce innovation aspect of the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And what was done during this period of time is actually increased our reach. So we have a team in Southern California now that's rather new, but we've been able to work more easily with them. And a lot of our things are meetings that we attend. And so instead of driving from one to the next, to the next, to the next, we're able to be everywhere, virtually. And so for us, I think it's been a really, it's been a great strategy. And I think it's one of the things that I'm most grateful for during COVID. I know a lot of people had suffered during that time, but on the other hand, it really provided greater productivity for us and more connection, and just I know that we kind of miss each other, but at the same time, it's just been really beneficial for the production and also for the connection.
Thanks for sharing that, Laura. And if you have a policy that you want to share and you want to email it to us, we'd love to see it. If that's something you're allowed to do, we would love to be able to post that and share that so that we can learn from one another. We can replicate some of these practices that weren't working, lessons learned over this unique time. There was a question, a few questions back about a 401A plan supporting and supplementing some of these lower CalPERS pensions that have happened since the change in CalPERS benefits. Did anyone have a comment or an answer to that? If any of you are funding a 401A plan to supplement the lower CalPERS pensions? If you do, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Won't put you on the spot to be live, but would love to know that and want to make sure we had that brought back to the top.
I do know the state offers the Savings Plus program, which I'm not sure if it's a 401A, but they do have the 457, the 403B.
Excellent. Well, we are certainly excited to hear all of this feedback. And one of the things I want to make sure we give everyone a chance to weigh in, drop in the chat or raise your hand. Is there any other question that you want to ask this group, that you want to ask of these experts in retention and workforce and just in general, anything you want to ask them about what you're dealing with right now, maybe some suggestions for any challenges that you have before we move into the latter part of our activity today? I just want to make a note in the chat that Tina's mentioning that she's heard from people in the social worker fields that do home visits, that when they went to virtual meetings, they could get more done in a day. But that increase in the volume was actually more stressful, which led to more burnout because the caseloads were so much higher. So even though they could get more done, it was probably having the opposite effect. Even though it was more productive, they weren't, the balance was off. The work-life balance was a little off. So that's, I think, could be the case for so many people. Productivity was high, but burnout was high too, even in the virtual environment. Brandon's got a question about the virtual events for recruiting. It seems like they could be hit or miss, and I've heard that too. Has anybody had good or bad experiences with virtual events for recruiting, and did it depend on when you hosted them? I know that some in the earlier part of the pandemic were not good at all, but maybe they're getting better, or maybe certain types are better based on certain jobs that are being hired for and certain categories of recruitment. Anybody have any updates or thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's all about channels now, right? Social media channels, you got to hit LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of those channels, and it takes a certain skill set to really bring those audiences in and be able to target those audiences.
Yeah, Terry's probably got some thoughts on this too. She does a lot of these. Terry, what have you seen?
We actually saw a huge need for virtual. Obviously, we work with employers and our services are at no cost to employers. So we had to continue to deliver those services to connect job seekers to the employers that we work with. And because of COVID, it was virtual. Zoom is a very hard platform to do a multiple, a large amount of attendees. So our agency actually researched a career platform called Talent Space, and we have secured that platform. It is like a virtual job fair where each company has their own booth, and it's very robust. We did an event with CalHR, a series of events which were focused on occupational sectors. So the first one was around the administrative assistant cluster, office assistant cluster. We had 1,800 people show, and CalHR actually was making a commitment to track hires, and they were able to at least respond that they were able to hire 32 people for that category. Then we moved to the second, which was accounting and then IT. And it was very well received. CalHR was very happy with the results. And we're actually working with Esther from the Sacramento County. I know she's on the call here today. We're going to be doing a similar event for her. We did one for the city of Sacramento. We've used it for the CDCR. And so I think maybe sometimes it's timing. It's how you structure it. And I do believe a platform, the type of platform you use, makes it so much easier for participants to participate, log on, interact with the employers. And I think that's one of the big keys. So just a shout out, if any of you are interested, we can help you with the recruitment. So if you want to reach out, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Thanks, Terry. We've got a couple comments in the chat, and then we'll certainly move on. Virtual career fairs, a lot of prep on either end, right? And there's a lot certainly to be done, both in promotion and otherwise. Really great comments in the chat. And some people are doing consistent weekly career fairs or connections, and the registrations vary anywhere from 5 to 70 people who attend, but the marketing is really critical. So lots of items in the chat around the virtual career fairs.
This is Susan again. I just want to support what Terry said in terms of having a robust platform. It makes a huge difference. I've participated in a national career event where we had companies from all over the U.S. who had either different breakout areas, and I'm sure behind the scenes there was a lot of prep. I know just for our piece there was a lot of work, but really just as a face-to-face career fair takes a lot of prep and such, but the platform, doing it something other than Zoom, really made it a lot easier for both participants and the businesses to have it just more seamless.
Thank you, Susan. All right, well, I think we certainly would love for you to continue to drop things into the chat as we go into our wrap up, and I will ask Nikita to go back to the slide deck, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues and co-host. So Terry's going to cover just some of the things that IPPS could focus on in 2022. We started talking a little bit about it, but definitely career fairs are certainly one of the things we've discussed as a leadership team about maybe helping with that challenge, certainly. And what other focus areas did you want for us to consider? And Terry, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. I was reading a chat, so I got distracted. So I missed my cue. So what should IPPS focus on in 2022? Should we, should we continue our career in government day as one of the things we've done in the past? Should we really focus on some of these issues that were raised today? Do we look at how can we make recruitment? Do we focus on recruitment to support some of the issues that you talked about? So we really want to, hear from you as far as what IPPS should focus on. And so I believe if you want to talk to us, raise your hand, give us some input. You could always email us later if you have an aha moment. But we also, if you have any other questions or comments about IPPS in general, we'd love to open the floor up right now and hear what you have to say. Or you can post it in the chat.
It's Susan again. I think it's really key to get kind of next generation aware and interested in these careers. I think a lot of folks have an impression of what it means to work in public sector based on kind of taking a civics class in school or whatever, and I don't think they really understand the breadth of the careers as well as the impact that they can make. So I think the more that we can raise awareness with our young folks, I think it's better for everyone, and do it in a way that we really reach into a lot of different neighborhoods and such. So.
Thank you, Susan. I see some hands, so I don't quite know who raised theirs first. So if I pick someone that's been waiting longer, I apologize. Laura Thompson.
Thanks, Terry. I just wanted to kind of echo what Susan was saying there as well. I think that educating people about what is available and what the culture is like. I think one of our initiatives in apprenticeship is actually trying to change the culture of, or to inform people better about, the culture of public service or public sector and civil service, to make it more appealing in a way. I think a lot of people don't know what that experience is like. So getting that information out in these types of forums, I think is really important, as well as I really love how everybody has come together today. I think this is one of the greatest thing that IPPS is doing, is just bringing people together to where we could share information and our experiences. And I think that's highly valuable, no matter what the topic might be around workforce. So I'm really grateful for that. And I look forward to more of these discussions.
Well, thank you, Laura. That does kind of pique another question I wanted to throw out. You guys can think about it. Do you see us having these type of meetings every 2 months or quarterly? And if there's any specific subjects you would like to put in the chat of things you would like us to structure these meetings around, that would be very helpful. And now I see Kenya has her hand raised.
Hi, Terry. Thank you. I'm just, I guess, doubling down on what the previous two speakers just referred to. It would be nice if, especially for the K-12s, if we had those entry-level positions that students could get in on, whether that's having some advanced education, going to a 2-year, then following to a 4-year if they need that, or what are those positions that they can get or apply for right after graduation from high school. And then also looking at what are those career trajectories for them? What does that career ladder look like long term? Because students don't understand, when you talk about working in the public sector, they really don't know what that means, and they don't understand the breadth of jobs and positions that are in there. And it's really hard for K-12 to kind of explain that to them also, because it's kind of a complicated system, right? So, but also I know in the past with IPPS, there was a time there, and I haven't, when I was working in a different district, I was more involved with the organization than I am at the county level. But there was a moment there where they were really trying to push and show students all the different industries that are in public sectors, right? And how they relate. So even if a student's interested in culinary, there are public sector culinary positions, or, that they could look into. I think that was a great way to go to show students that there are many industries within public service that they can reach out to. It's not just one way.
Yes.
So if we, I don't know if they're still working on that, but that was really effective.
Right. Sort of like a career pathways map for the public sector, and how all of the different, like you were mentioning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
Right.
that would help the teachers, especially like the CTE teachers,
Yes.
depending on whatever industry sector they're in. If they know those public sector positions, that they can show and push to students that are within their industry sector that they're teaching to those students, then those, then they can highlight those more. But right now it's just kind of like a big bowl, and they don't know where to pick from.
Yeah, I agree. And in our school systems, there's not too many public sector career pathways or academies in the schools we currently have. If it is, it's based on law, fire, or police, right?
Yes, absolutely. Always. That's pretty much.
Yeah, that's pretty
even
much
even the law ones, like if for students who want to be like an attorney or something like that, those are very rare. Usually they are more the fire, EMT, and police academies. So
what would be great is all pathways if there was a public sector infusion or thread, because if you're in a business pathway or academy, you have all these other opportunities. IT, I mean, it really, healthcare, it can apply to all of the existing pathways. Maybe we should start talking about threading public sector as one of those opportunities in those pathway programs.
One thing I'll add as it relates to that is that ILG does have a curriculum called Picture Yourself in Local Government, and it's obviously tied towards cities, counties, and special districts. But part of that is focused on, it's all focused on K-12, but it's really for anyone to understand how government works and maybe where they could fit themselves in it as an employee or and as a staff member, or even as an elected official or an appointed official. But one of the key pieces of that is acknowledging, okay, if you're interested in this section, this category, this type of activity, you might be good in this job within local government. And so it certainly could be broadened to include other types of jobs, and maybe ones we hadn't already considered when we developed this a couple of years ago. But I think that could be, kind of redesigned and built out to highlight some of those things in partnership with some of you.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a great idea, Erica. We've talked about that curriculum a couple years or so ago. I'd love to see us move that forward. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. And then we also do civics education. And one of the things ILG will be doing this year is public education around how government works, specifically local government, because the general populace doesn't know, not just, K-12, not just college students.
Right.
So I think it's definitely something that will work in tandem with some of the work you're doing.
Sounds awesome. See, anything else?
I do think maybe in the interest of time we keep going. Oh, go ahead, Susan.
Sorry. And I would strongly suggest if there's any way we can encourage organizations to offer internships. So it's one thing to do the career exploration, but the next step is really to give students a taste of what the environment's like. Because I think it's not only not knowing what the opportunities are, but it's also maybe a kind of that it's your father's Chevrolet. It's this image of what it means to what working in public sector is, what the culture is like. So I think the more we can do to provide, whether, and they may not necessarily need to be long internships, but some way to expose the next generation to the culture, I think it's going to be really important.
Yeah, so true. Which was one of the beauties of the Career in Government Day, because they got to have some hands-on experiences, but it's more of a longer term paid opportunity. I'm big on the paid opportunity for our young people. And I think there's some opportunities in working with the city of Sacramento. They got a huge grant to place 800 interns in the next 2 years in public service. So waiting to get more information on that. I'll certainly share that out with the group.
Great. In the interest of time, maybe we keep moving so we can get everyone out by 4:30.
Thank you all for your input. This was great information.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I think we're turning it over to Jeff. Next slide.
Okay, looking ahead, we're so glad to have heard from you. Much of what you've shared today, we're going to go back through and do some analysis, look at the themes, and kind of just really hear so that we can set some strategic goals. We do have a strategic plan, and we probably will be needing to revisit that. Also, there were some standing work groups that were out there that were meeting on a regular basis, and they were delivering at different levels. Some of them had some great successes. We want to revisit and look at those work groups with you. So you might see us perhaps put a survey out saying, are these the right work groups still? Do you want to be part of a work group? Would you like to participate in a work group, or even create a more relevant or more prescient work group for what the issues are today? Remember, this is about reinvigorating the workforce post-COVID, post-pandemic. And we recognize that there's a shift. Earlier on, we were looking at a strategic plan around the silver tsunami and retirements and the kind of the multi-generational workforce. And we see the landscape shifting. And that's really why we wanted to listen today. And so we're going to take that hearing, but we do want to continue to hear from you. So if you have, again, those aha moments after, don't hesitate to email us, because we're going to be collating all of this information and coming back to you with some outlines and guidance for how we might clarify our forward motion in our strategic plan. Next slide, please. So this is where the fun comes in. This is probably the best thing about our community. Look how large of a group we were able to assemble. Look how diverse it is across race and gender and organization types. It's really an amazing group. So what I'd like to do is have you guys share out. And so I want to acknowledge The next Gov event that's in the chat, they're looking for a director for public recruitment, a volunteer position. So if you want to get even more engaged and tie in those partnerships, this is the place to do that. So thanks for the share, Seth, on that. Couple things coming up I want to throw in here. There's a flyer I'm going to drop in. We have an event that we are presenting with ASPA, which is the American Society of Public Administration. It is a recruitment seminar focused on women in IT. We have great vacancies in IT, and we have much underrepresentation in women in IT. Yeah, if you have events, please do share them there. So this is something that's coming up that you can join next week. So please do get the word out, help us get folks interested in IT jobs. The EPA, the DMV, and my third partner, and DGS, Department of General Services, will be hosting a conversation, and it'll be moderated by CDCR, the California Department of
Corrections and
CDCR.
Rehabilitation.
Yep.
Thank you. I just know the initials sometimes. And then one more thing, I want to also just plug ASPA, which is the American Society of Public Administration. They're a partner that you might be interested because you have a role as a civil service leader. And this is a nonprofit organization that is a national organization. This is the Sacramento chapter that I'm promoting here, but I'm a member of their executive council, and so they're a tie-in to the ecosystem here, and they would love your volunteership and interest in really, again, supporting individuals who go into policy careers, and those types of careers tend to create our executive leaders and our directors and our CEAs and chief executive officers. So really to kind of spur the leadership into public service. And so those are some announcements. I don't know there are specific events yet, but we will get some messaging out to you as we try to reestablish our regular cadence. And maybe I can pause here and ask Erica, I think we had a cadence, or Terry, we had a cadence. Are we going to continue that, or is that a question we want to ask our audience?
So I did pose that in the Q&A session. I asked if we should meet every 2 months or quarterly. We did have someone post in the chat that they thought quarterly would work. So our cadence generally was every 2 months, but we can look at a lengthier meeting or quarterly if that's what the group feels they want.
Yeah. So if you would, go to the next slide and it'll tell you how to sign up for our newsletter, I think.
Thank you.
And that would be the best way to stay connected and informed about that. And we can poll everyone about what the timelines are and what the topics would be.
Quarterly is good. Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This is our website here, pathwayspublicservice.org. So I'm not going to deliver that. You have another slide that we're kind of tight on time. So
yeah. So
next slide, please.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
And then next slide. Thank you all so much for joining us.
We're so grateful for your time, so grateful for your input. You really helped us really crystallize IPPS for 2022.
Yes.
We will be following up with additional resources and links and comments if we have any from all of you. Some of you've emailed, some of you have sent information already just behind the scenes during this call. So we appreciate that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, IPPS team, shall we end our meeting?
I just wanted to say it was